For anything like me, and I know I am, you probably never made much use of the in-game trades in Pokemon games. At least in my case, it was often a Pokemon I didn't think I had any use for on my team, or more often than not, I just wasn't speaking to people in the overworld to know I could trade with them. Did you know you could get Crinkles the Tangela from Cinnabar Island in Pokemon Red? How about Mark the Lickitung in Cerulean City? Well, maybe you did and maybe you didn't, but the small caveat in Pokemon Crystal that we'll be using for this run is that when you receive a Pokemon, you're not its original trainer. Not being its original trainer comes with a couple of caveats. Number one is that the trainer ID is different. It's the trainer that you received the Pokemon from's ID. Traded Pokemon get boosted experience 1.5 times. And finally, you require badges so that traded Pokemon will obey you upon crossing certain level thresholds. I'd remember that one if I were you. For this video, the Pokemon we'll be bringing on board technically won't all be in-game trades for a couple of reasons. We have to use a starter Pokemon until we reach Violet City and can recruit our first Pokemon. I'm specifically bringing on board Pokemon that have different trainer IDs, and not all of these fit into Cerebi's definition of in-game trades. Now, if we're here to discuss the definition of a trade, just to be pedantic, it's not always one physical or living thing for another. Technically, it can be a promise too. So with that said, let's briefly go over the rules. Number one is no items in battle, but held items are fine. We can catch Pokemon for HM purposes as the run would not be feasible without them. We won't be using them in battle though. For this one, we won't be saving during the Elite Four. And that is it, let's kick things off. Right off the bat, we start by picking Totodile. This is absolutely so that we can have a hard time with the second rival battle. We start the game as normal, meeting Professor Oak and Mr. Pokemon until we eventually end up battling the rival. As you might expect, not too difficult a task, but it eventually allows us to reach Violet City, where we can make our first trade. But before we can make the trade, we need the Pokemon that this trainer wants, and that's a Bellsprout. You can easily catch one of these leafy boys on Route 31, just outside the eastern entrance to Violet City, and level 5 is fine. Then we'll head into Violet City and visit the house to the southwest of the Pokemon Center. In here, we'll find Kyle, who's willing to trade us Rocky the Onix. With Rocky added to our party, we are done with Totodile outside of being a HM butler. Let's take a moment to take a look at Rocky the Onix. Now, according to Bulbapedia at least, in-game traded Pokemon have predetermined IVs. Is this going to impact the run? Not particularly, but Onixes aren't great either way. Fun fact, the original Japanese name of Rocky is Buruburu, which is an onomatopoeic word that can mean trembling or shaking, like Onix using earthquake would cause. Anyway, with Kyle's Onix, you may think we're in a decent position to face Falkner. However, though Onix has great defense and not terrible speed, it doesn't have much else going for it. Via level up, it doesn't particularly learn any great moves either, and its attack is so low that it's really not worth spending any TMs on. While Onix can survive fairly easily against the trainers in Falkner's gym, the leader himself is another matter entirely. This is because both Falkner's Pidgey and Pidgeotto have a decent move in Mudslap against us. Preempting this, I decided to attempt Sprout Tower only to get absolutely rolled by another Leafy Boy. It's a shame because we need the levels and our only option will be wild Pokemon. Though we appreciate the 1.5 times XP, don't get me wrong, it's gonna be tedious. In the end, the biggest issue with Falkner isn't the damage we take, don't get me wrong, it is an issue, but because we're not strong enough to swiftly defeat Pidgey, it's going ham on the Mudslaps and lowering Rocky's accuracy to such a degree that it just can't hit. So if our only option is to level up, what issue do you think that might cause? Because I never really played with traded Pokemon either in-game or through friends, I'd totally forgotten this point. What happens when Rocky reaches level 11? Yeah, it stops obeying us, and as an added surprise, not only does the Pokemon either not use the move you want it to or just outright not do anything, the Pokemon will even choose to just fall asleep. Now we're at a higher level, yeah, but we've made things exponentially more difficult because we're only making a move once every 2 turns if we are lucky. So what is the solution here? Honestly, we can't defeat Falkner at a lower level, so we might as well just keep leveling up. Level 12 is the golden number in the end, and this is after a bunch of attempts by the way. We start the battle with Rocky thankfully choosing to obey and use Screech, which hits. We're not even getting into how annoying it is to try and get that move off after you've taken a million Mudslaps. Anyway, getting off that Screech was important because at this level we can now 2-shot it if we hit, though we do get extremely lucky this time around. We basically can't take more than 20 HP damage because we just won't survive the battle. We've got a berry, but it's still close, and Pidgeot's out next. It's going to use Mudslap, and of course, Rocky's not feeling like listening. Basically, This battle is full on Jesus take the wheel. Like, I can't really do anything but keep pressing A and just hoping for the best. We get ridiculously close to the wire coming near the end. I assume that Pidgeot ran out of Mud Slap, or our health so low it just starts going for Gust, which only does 1 damage. With just 2 HP left, we firstly manage to tackle, which hits. Then on the next turn, we're on 1 HP when Bind hits and finishes Pidgeot off. I mean, whatever, we earned it. Obviously from here, things are only going to get better, right? Well, until we have Bugsy's badge, Rocky ain't going to be cooperating with us. We have no choice but to just do our best to plow through the next portion of the game. Thankfully, the combination of improved XP gain mixed with Onix's bulk does help, but you have to save before each battle because you honestly have no idea how things are going to play out. Well, they play out in that it's annoying, but we do make it to Bugsy in the end and at level 20. I mean, there's no kill like overkill, right? We are in a better position though. We can resist pretty much anything that Bugsy could throw at Rocky. So the main thing will be just getting on Rocky's good side for the battle. This is my second time fighting Bugsy because Kakuna poisoned us the first time round and there is no way we are lasting the entire battle. By now, Rocky has learned Rock Throw, which will be super effective against all of Bugsy's Pokemon. The general theme of this battle is to just simply keep spamming Rock Throw and hope that Rocky obliges. Surprisingly, things actually went pretty well in this battle, and with Bugsy defeated, it means Rocky will finally obey us, for a time at least. We're now in a much better position to tackle the rival. Gastly and Zubat I'm not worried about, but little Chikorita's now Bayleaf with moves like Razor Leaf and Barrier, so how is Rocky going to get through this battle all by himself? With our level advantage, Rocky has no problem taking out the likes of Gastly and Zubat with Rock Throw, but even though we are 5 levels higher than Bayleaf, will always get brought out next. A crit Razor Leaf will absolutely destroy Rocky. So what is the plan going to be here? The first port of call, like all challenges, is to level up. By going and fighting the trainers I purposely avoided before, we're able to raise Rocky's level to 23, which is just good enough to tank a Razor Leaf in most situations. The second thing is assessing the TMs we have to see if they can give us any advantage. The most useful TM Rocky can learn right now is Mud Slap, so we'll be going with Falkner strats for this battle. The hope is basically to lower Bayleaf's accuracy so that Razor Leaf doesn't hit. Let's just see how that works out. Against the Gastly, we know a Rock Throw will KO it. However, now that we have Mud Slap, it makes most sense to use that instead to mitigate the lower accuracy. Now, when the rival sends out Bayleaf, we know it's going to go for Razor Leaf, so we go straight for that Mud Slap. Its Razor Leaf doesn't miss, but at this level we can tank it. It's just that the rest of its Razor Leafs now have to miss. After 2 Mud Slaps, I decide to switch to Rock Throw because it's all down to luck in the end. Rock Throw ends up doing about a third, so 3 of them should be enough to KO Bayleaf, but will they hit? Will Bayleaf switch to Barrier or Poison Powder? In the end, it chooses not to and just keeps missing. Fine by us. Somehow we are able to knock Bayleaf out. Crazy, but we still have 1 Pokemon remaining, Zubat. That thing could easily knock us out, so Zubat's out. The moment of truth. We go for a Rock Throw, it hits and it smooshes Zubat. Between Falkner and the rival, we are getting a fair bit of luck this run. However, there is light at the end of the tunnel because with the rival defeated, we are now able to do a few things. Number 1 is that we can obviously get cut, which allows us to pick up Headbutt, which is always useful to have. The second useful thing is that we can now get our second Pokemon. Located in the Goldenrod department store is Mike, and Mike will trade us his Machop for an Abra. You can grab Abra one of 2 ways. Number 1 is roaming the grass by the daycare until one appears, but it can always use teleport to escape, so can be pretty frustrating. Another easier way is to pick up the coin purse from the Goldenrod Underground, purchase some coins from the game corner, and then simply purchase the Abra. It'll be a lower level, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. I've traded with Mike before in solo runs because his Machop arrives with a Gold Berry, which restores a ton of HP at this level and was integral in beating Whitney. Anyway, Machop's name in Japanese is Kinniku, which is the Japanese for muscle. There's nothing lost in translation in its English equivalent name this time. In a recent run I did of Pokemon Emerald using just Gym Leader's Pokemon, I had a Machop, and it wasn't particularly great. There were some other rules at play there that aren't worth mentioning, but this time around we do get to level Machop up, learning new moves and eventually evolving it into a Machoke. Low kick's always decent for Machop, along with moves like Vital Throw and Cross Chop, but this Machop's attacking IVs or DVs aren't that great, so we won't really realise Machop's true potential. And though we could teach Machop an elemental punch or 2, its special attack is so low that it honestly wouldn't be worth it. But Machop is extremely effective against our next gym leader, Whitney. But before we visit Whitney, we'll be making a new feathered friend. As I said right at the beginning, we're recruiting a team of Pokemon whose trainer IDs are different. The Spearow, named Kenya in English, is named Hikyaku in Japanese. Interestingly, to me at least, we've got the kanji for he, also used for flying like Tobu or Hikoki, which is an aeroplane, and Kyaku, which is leg, but more like the strut of a locomotive rather than, the legs you walk on. Together, the words mean a courier or a postman. See, we're on an educational journey too. Anyway, Kenya's pretty decent. It'll end up getting a fair bit of use, especially when it evolves into Fearow later on and learns moves like Drill Peck. So now we can go and take on Whitney. And honestly, there's not much to say about Whitney. We have Machop, we've got Muscle. At level 19, we're just going to spam Karate Chop against Clefairy. Though we take a double slap, it doesn't cause too much damage, so we'll KO it fairly swiftly. Then, when Whitney feels Miltank, I switch it up to Low Kick. I don't know how effective it would be compared to Karate Chop, but it's doing about a third, which is just good enough. In the end, I do switch it up to Karate Chop, and we end up getting a crit, so that is not bad at all either. With Whitney defeated, we've given ourselves more of a buffer against unruly Pokemon and can proceed to Ecruteak. Though there is a new recruit I can go and pick up, I decide to take on the Burn Tower rival first, just to get that out of the way. Unlike in a solo run where you're getting crippled by Haunter's Curse, now we can simply switch out and just avoid that altogether. It makes the rival a pretty trivial battle. What also ends up being trivial because of our Pokemon is Morty too. Having a normal Pokemon in your ranks to deal with Morty is a common Nuzlocke strat, but Gengar can still prove an issue if it keeps hitting with Hypnosis. For us, our normal Pokemon is the recently evolved Fearow. With Ghastly out first, we're going to go with Peck. While the move isn't capable of KOing Ghastly, it does go ahead and uses Curse on us, which ain't too great. We end up leveling up and have the opportunity to learn Pursuit. Unfortunately, while you think it'd be useful against Ghost Pokemon, Special Attack ain't Fearow's forte. In the end, it does halfish, but then we get put to sleep by Haunter. No Mint Berry, so no choice but to change into Rocky. Lucky for us, when Rocky's out, Haunter went for Mimic and comes up empty. The next turn, we can go for Rock Throw, which not only hits, but is able to defeat the Haunter. I was expecting Morty to field Gengar next, but it seems he's saving his ace, so we get the other Horn. We've still got Mud Slap on our hands and are at a high enough level that two of them succeed in KOing the Haunter after it uses Mean Look for some reason. But now we have the real challenge in Gengar. We do not want its Hypnosis to hit, so of course we're going straight for the Mud Slaps. While not great damage output, it is causing the misses that we need. Unfortunately, on the third Hypnosis we do get hit. Don't want Gengar getting that HP back, so we have no choice but to change things up. However, Muscle ain't so good against Ghost Pokemon. We literally have no move that can damage Gengar. Now potentially, I could have just swapped between Fearow and Machop until Gengar ran out of Hypnosis or Dream Eater, but I decide to stick it out. We do tank one Dream Eater before Fearow wakes up and uses Pursuit. Not great damage output, but we're seeing the result of those Mud Slaps when Gengar had a hard time putting us back to sleep. For the rest of the battle, we'll just continue with Pursuit until the Pokemon's down and victory is ours. While we could have recruited a new friend a little earlier, I decided to tie it in with actually visiting Olivine City. If you visit the house at the top right of the city, you'll find Tim, who will trade you Volty the Voltorb for a Krabby. In Japanese, its name is Biru. Nothing special there, just Billy. If you grab the Super Rod, which can also be acquired in Olivine, you can just fish for a level 20 Krabby on the shore. Simple enough. Like Machop, I previously used a Voltorb in an Emerald run, and yeah, it's not great. The thing with Voltorb and Electrode is that while they can learn electric moves, they don't get any via level up. In this gen at least. Spark seemed like a decent move to give them, but I suppose that was exclusive to Lantern in Gen 2. Honestly, outside of teaching this thing Thunder, its best move is probably Explosion. If you want to waste some coins, you could teach it Thunderbolt, but by the time that's available, it really won't be too useful. I did sacrifice the rollout TM on it, which I kinda regretted because of another Pokemon we'll be picking up shortly. We can teach Surf to Croconaw in order to reach Chuck. In a house in Cianwood is a guy called Mania, crazy name. Mania will give you a Shuckie for safekeeping. Following the naming conventions that permeate through a few games, Shuckle is named Shuckie. Are we seeing a pattern here? Actually, its Japanese name is a lot more fitting and would have been a lot better in my opinion. It's called Neshi or Nessie in English. Obviously, this is a nod to the Loch Ness Monster, which is often called Nessie. Would have been a much cooler name, but here we are. The plan potentially with Shuckie was to use defense curl rollout strats to dominate. Two things. I'd already taught Voltorb rollout. I know it learns it via level up. Anyway, you can also dominate the game with just a Shuckie, as seen in J-Rose 11's Shuckle run. We'll use Shuckie for a while, but honestly, it's not going to be viable long term. Anyway, we've got Chuck to deal with, and we have Fearow. I didn't delay its evolution to get Drill Peck because I honestly don't think we'll need it. Against Chuck's Primate, we start off well when Peck ends up critting and one-shotting Primate. Chuck will then send out his second and final Pokemon, kinda weird it's only 2, in Poliwrath. Things start off well enough. Peck, though not as powerful as Drill Peck, still does about a third, but then we end up getting hit with Dynamic Punch, which takes us over half HP. The next turn, we are able to avoid hitting ourselves in confusion and get off another Peck. Poliwrath will go for another Dynamic Punch and miss this time, but our luck doesn't hold out for the next turn, unfortunately. Not only do we peck ourselves in the face, but Poliwrath hits with Dynamic Punch and we are KO'd. We've certainly got a few reserves of Pokemon though, so I am not worried at all. After a moment deliberating, I eventually field Volty to get its first proper kill. It's quicker if nothing else and can use Sonic Boom to defeat Poliwrath. Easy first try victory. Now that we have Fly and teach it to Kenya, we can return to Olivine, climb the tower, speak to Jasmine, grab the potion and then return to take a run at the gym. It's not a particularly challenging fight because we have a few good matchups on our hands. We're starting with Onix for the Magnemite because I relented and taught Rocky Dig. Despite Rocky's low attack, it is able to one-shot Magnemite, so Jasmine will pivot to Steelix. I am you, but better. So we're weak to Iron Tail and Steelix has super high defense. I tried this battle before and Steelix's Iron Tail would do a fine job of KOing Rocky. We'll start with Screech, help lower Steelix's awesome defense. Then we just pray Steelix's Iron Tail misses, which it ends up doing for a total of 3 times, which is insane, while we're using Screech and that ends up hitting 3 times. Wild. Now we can start laying on the digs. With the defense drops when we hit, Dig's doing well over half damage. Steelix then misses its next Iron Tail, actually kind of feeling bad for it now. Well, we use the final dig and end up knocking it out, leaving us with the final Magnemite. Time to take care of it, just as we did the first. It is a one-shot and that is Jasmine done with. Much like with my Marowak run, the 8 Johto gym leaders tend not to give you too much trouble unless you're trying Falkner with a disobedient Onix, but it's the Elite Four where you get that predictable spike in difficulty. At this point in the game, we have no choice but to endure the Lake of Rage, Team Rocket rigmarole until we are able to finally challenge Pryce at his gym. Facing Pryce, we'll be rolling in with Voltorb against his Seal, a Voltorb which still doesn't have an electric move, but we have Rollout which I'm sure will be just as good. Because Seal's neutral damage, I just start lining up the rollout. In the beginning, it looks like it's starting to work, but on the 4th rollout, which would have obliterated Seal and left us in a good position for Dugong, Voltorb of course misses. However, instead of getting Dugong, Pryce ends up sending out Piloswine next. We're locked into rollout with Voltorb, so I'm not expecting it to survive even though we move first. Rollout tickles Piloswine and it then hits us with a Blizzard, shaving off Voltorb's last bit of HP. We don't have a good answer to Piloswine. Well, Machop maybe, but I end up going into Rocky to try and soften Piloswine up because I doubt Machop can knock it out on its lonesome. Rocky, bless it, uses Dig against Piloswine and it ain't great. Piloswine then uses Blizzard and the Sneck ain't surviving that move. It is a one-shot, so we are forced to bring out Machop, which is now Machoke by the way. Though we are a couple of levels behind Piloswine, we will outspeed it. Piloswine is not particularly fast anyway, and we use Low Kick. Honestly, I probably should have just pivoted to Machoke right away because it does manage to drain the remainder of the Woolly Mammoth's HP. It makes the most sense to keep Machoke out because Pryce's final Pokemon is the Dugong. As long as we do over half HP with our attacks, we should be able to outpace the potential health that Dugong can recover via rest. While we're not faster, Dugong's Aurora Beam doesn't cause an attack drop and our Low Kick takes Dugong well over the halfway mark. With Dugong just out of healing range, we just have to survive another attack, which we do before using a final Low Kick to defeat the Dugong and give us our 7th gym badge. Now, Clair could be a bit of a dice roll. We have no Pokemon that are effective against her team of dragons or pseudo-dragons, but what we can do is recruit our final Johto companion. Lucky for us, it's right in Blackthorn City. Unlucky for us is that it's perhaps the strictest of trades to make. We require a Dragonair, and not just any Dragonair, a female Dragonair. But at this point in the game, we can't just go and capture a Dragonair. The next best thing we can do is catch a Dratini. I didn't really know this because I rarely caught Dratini at this stage of the game, but you can actually fish for one with the Good Rod on Route 45. Right at the bottom right of this path, you'll find a small, let's call it a pond. At a 10% rate, you can encounter a Dratini. Dratini has a 50% chance to be either female or male. With those odds, we statistically have a 5% chance to encounter a female Dratini. How long do you think that is going to take? In reality, like 4 or so attempts. Crazy luck, but we don't question the will of the Pokegods, we are only grateful for it. However, we still have to level up that Dratini into a Dragonair, which is going to take some time. While I did battle the trainers around Route 45, we're honestly not going to have our new friend until we've dealt with Clair, because the time it's going to take to gain those needed levels. So let's just battle Clair. Her first Dragonair is not usually the Thunderbolt Dragonair, so we'll be fielding Fearow, god tier Pokemon that it is. Our best move is Fly because we have still not learned Drill Peck just yet. We are quicker than the Dragonair and can use Fly, then we'll dodge an attack, and when we swoop back down, we're actually doing over half, which is a good start. While we do get hit with Surf the next turn, we can line up another Fly to defeat the Dragonair the very next turn. Now Clair's going to want to bring out that Dragonair with Thunderbolt. It's Rocky's time to shine, and it's going to get fewer of these moments as the game progresses. When it's brought out, we get the Thunder Wave miss. Without any great move really, our best bet is to dig. After dodging an attack and servicing, we're doing about a quarter to Dragonair, and its Dragon Breath is causing about the same amount of damage. With this in mind, I go for Screech the very next turn. This is because if we do hit with Dig, it may put Dragonair into healing range. With the Screech, however, the next time we use Dig, it'll end up finishing Dragonair off. However, Clair's next Dragonair is the one with Ice Beam. It doesn't make much sense to swap into another Pokemon because we'll just tank a decent hit. Instead, I just decide to roll with Headbutt because at least we may get the flinch. When we don't, there's the Ice Beam and Rocky is in shambles. I do deliberate on who we could honestly send out next and finally decide on Muscle. We're certainly not winning the speed race, and I did think about using Seismic Toss, but eventually went with Vital Throw instead. I was actually surprised by how much damage the move caused. Initially I thought it was too much and Clair would heal, but she ends up having Dragonair attack once again, and we've chosen Seismic Toss. We tank the hit pretty well and defeat the third and final Dragonair, leaving just Kingdra. Kingdra's obviously pretty powerful and bulky. The plan is to just do some kind of damage and hope we can take a hit. I use Vital Throw once again. Kingdra uses Surf and we somehow hang on. Vital Throw then maybe does about 1/4. Next turn, Muscle ain't surviving, but that's just fine because I had a plan for this battle all along, and it comes in the form of Volty, who is now an Electrode by the way. Volty should be able to tank a move from Kingdra, which it does after moving first with Sonic Boom. Now it's exploding time, and we actually hit even though we got hit with a Smokescreen, which is nice, scoring a crit and defeating the Kingdra. Yay, all 8 gym badges collected. But even now, this Dratini has stubbornly not gotten enough experience in order to level up. We have no choice but to go right up to the Elite 4, battling every single trainer, and then rove around the map until finally we evolve this thing. What's annoying is that it's been taking experience from our other party members. However, at least the level ups will carry over when we make the trade. Okay, so in Blackthorn we have Emmy, and Emmy will trade our female Dragonair for a Dodrio named Doris. This means we have another flying type Pokemon in our ranks, and that number is only going to increase. Dodrio itself is decent enough. The best moves we'll have with it are Drill Peck and Tri-Attack, and stat-wise it's going to excel in speed and attack, which will do us just fine for the trials ahead. Oh, and a fun thing I've found out during this in-game trading is that if your Pokemon has a held item, then that held item goes with that Pokemon. So in Dragonair's case, I said bye-bye to that EXP share. It never even crossed my mind that I'd lose it. However, Doris is our final member for Johto, and we have now collected all the Pokemon that we'll have available to challenge the Elite Four. The Elite Four themselves have Pokemon upwards of level 40. In a solo run, whether that's minimum battles or not, you generally want to be as high as reasonably possible when challenging these trainers. But in our case, with quite a numerous and somewhat diverse team, there's a chance we can face them at a lower level, right? Let's take a look at our very first run at the Elite Four. Our team consists of Doris the Dodrio, Rocky the Onix, Kenya the Fearow, Muscle the Machoke, Volty the Electrode, and Shuckie the Shuckle. Our levels are slightly uneven, with Shuckie being the lowest and Kenya being the highest because it's actually pretty decent. Because Will is up first, I did go and teach Electro Thunder in order to make him a little easier. In this battle, we basically want to hammer on the Thunders and just hope they connect. Against the first Xatu, of course, our first Thunder ends up missing and Xatu's Psychic inflicts just over half damage. Lucky for us, the very next turn Thunder actually hits and we comfortably make that range. But next, Will wants to send out Jinx. There's no good answer to this with the team we currently have. In hindsight, probably should have kept in Electrode and gone for Thunder or Rollout, but I decided to switch in Machoke. Obviously, this was a bad idea. Not only because Jinx uses Psychic and that will be a one-shot, but we never would have outsped the Jinx anyway. We then make another genius boardy chess move with fielding Rocky. Again, we're in the same boat. Though we could use Dig and maybe do good damage, Jinx is faster and has Ice Punch, so that will one-shot Rocky. I then sit there thinking for a moment. All the Pokemon we have, bar Electrode, would be weak to Jinx, mainly through Ice Punch. In the spirit of making terrible decisions, I do eventually send Shuckie out. There was no real plan beyond use Bide and Hope. Unfortunately, Shuckie is put to sleep first turn. However, the one potentially positive thing to come from this is that Jinx will possibly change up its moveset. We can capitalize on that by bringing out a Pokemon that can inflict some raw damage, and that's right up Kenya's alley. It comes out and ends up getting Double Slap, but that train of thought does not last long. We get Ice Punched, so I end up just resetting. Just a terrible first try. A few attempts later, we've got a bit more of a game plan in mind. Like we did before, Volty is the first Pokemon out on our side. I was thinking for a moment about rollout, but considering the psychic damage, I just go for Thunder to secure an Oko. Now, when Jinx is sent out, this is when we go for rollout. Our first attack does good enough damage, but then of course we are put to sleep. Remembering what move Jinx would probably go for next, I switch into Kenya and we are rewarded with a double slap. Jinx has awful defense, which means that when we use Drill Peck, it is capable of one-shotting it, and we've managed to get past a Pokemon that absolutely rolled our team a few battles ago. Will want to dispatch Slowbro next. It is bulky, so I don't expect Drill Peck to do that much. It's looking okay, but this is when Slowbro starts going for Curse to increase its defense. Slowbro is happy to do this for the next turn too, and while Drill Peck is still doing acceptable damage, we have to tank a Psychic in the process, leaving us on 50 HP. Thankfully, our next Drill Peck is capable of KOing Slowbro, so who's Will gonna send out next? Well, it's not Executor because we have the advantage and ends up being the second Xatu. What always catches me off guard is when Pokemon of a certain type or dual type are not resistant to their moves, like Xatu or even Fearow or Dodrio not resisting flying moves or fighting moves. It works out for us because Drill Peck can put in some work against the second Xatu, but that's about it for Kenya because it will get knocked out by Xatu. Not to worry though, because we've got a second bird to pick up the slack. Doris, the Dodrio, comes out. In a toss-up between Drill Peck and Tri Attack, I just stick with Drill Peck, but as you can guess, Will's gonna heal his Xatu first. The max potion in the end doesn't matter because we are faster than that Xatu, which means we'll have enough time to fire off 2 attacks and defeat it. What's even better was we get that clutch Tri Attack freeze too, but this means there's just one Pokemon remaining, Executor. We've got Drill Peck. It's not so much if we can defeat it, but I'm curious if we're going to be able to one-shot it. Turns out that no, we can't, but Executor uses Leech Seed, which at this point is, well, pointless. Another Drill Peck and Will is defeated. While we at least had some advantages going into Will, we can't say the same for Koga. Another thing with runs with more than just one Pokemon is that you end up spending a ton on potions and revives too. But I'm thinking against Ariados, we have a super effective move in Drill Peck. With Doris at a lower level, it can't hurt to share the XP wealth and have it go first. Drill Peck can pretty much sweep Ariados aside, but that Pokemon was never going to be the issue. Forretress, however, that could be. Against it, Drill Peck does about a quarter and it then uses Spikes again. Never a problem in a solo run, but could become annoying in battles like these. Because we're not causing too much damage and I suspect an explosion is in our future, I decide to switch into Rocky just in case we need a Pokemon to tank the aftermath. And here I discover another annoying, if kinda smart thing, the AI does with 2-turn attacks. If you keep using Dig, Forretress will just keep protecting on the turn it's supposed to hit. Super annoying, and it leaves us no choice but to switch our tactics to Screech. I know how high Forretress's defense is, so I make sure to use about 3 Screeches when they hit. From here, we can only realistically pivot to Rock Throw, still a terrible move to have this late in the game, but after 2 of them, it'll get the job done. Koga will then switch to his Crobat next. You'd think we'd have an advantage there. Crobat isn't defensively bulky by any stretch of the imagination, it's solid, but we see just how poor Onyx's attack is when Rock Slide is used. A quarter? Really? Thankfully, we are much bulkier and this allows us to withstand what little punishment Crobat can throw at us while we use Screech and then move on to Rock Throw. It is enough to knock Crobat out eventually, but I'm surprised it didn't go for Toxic. With Muck out next, it has no problem going for poison moves. We try to dig, and because its use minimized, we of course miss. And then we get poisoned. Not great, but it's about time that we switched out. I bring back Doris and just keep spamming Drill Peck. Though it does start to hit and does alright damage, Muck's Sludge Bomb ends up doing a ton. It's a good job it uses it sparingly because it could have easily destroyed poor Doris. However, we do make it through and to Koga's final Pokemon, Venomoth. Much like the Ariados that came before it, Doris has a move that can easily squash the Venomoth in Drill Peck. With just one Drill Peck, we have no problem getting that Oko and defeating Koga our first time attempting it. Bruno's probably the most clear cut in terms of advantages. We have a flying Pokemon, he has fighting Pokemon bar the Onix. We should be powerful and have enough team depth for this to be a non-issue. Just like we did with Koga, we're going to be rolling into the fight with Doris to pump those levels. I think we're probably faster than Hitmontop, but it does use Quick Attack, though it's not really effective. Drill Peck from Doris is rather effective and will one-shot Hitmontop, but Bruno will want to send out his Onix next. But we do have Muscle. Honestly, forgot it was even in the party, seeing as though it's barely been used. But yeah, we send out Muscle, even though its attacking DBs were kinda trash. Onix will usually go for Sandstorm, and that's exactly what we get. I don't know if we would have been faster, probably, but our best move may technically be Vital Throw, so I end up using that. Good news is that it does over half and Onix's Earthquake does just under half. Oh yeah, there's that chip damage from Sandstorm. Could be bad. Definitely wanting to go first, we use Karate Chop, but Onix is faster, uses Earthquake and leaves us on just 14 HP. Our Karate Chop does hit, but it can't finish Onix off. It's managed to outlast us because there's Sandstorm and we are knocked out. The only Pokemon we have that could kind of work here is Rocky. And what move do we have with Onix? Dig. And what will happen when we use Dig? Onix will use Earthquake. Thankfully, we managed to tank the hit on 24 HP and wouldn't have been affected by Sandstorm anyway. Now we have finally gotten through just 2 of Bruno's team. Hitmonlee's out and Rocky is going to have a bad time, so we'll send Doris back in. Again, I always expect fighting moves to not be effective against flying types, but it's neutral damage, flying normal. Doris gets taken down to 50 HP, but I'm expecting we'll move first next turn and one-shot it with Drill Peck. Both of those things end up coming true, and Doris even levels up to 42 in the process. Bruno will field the Hitmonchan next, but that should not be a problem. Hitmonchan could use Mach Punch to at least get some damage in, but for some reason doesn't even go for it and is happy for Doris to use Drill Peck and hand us another W. But despite both Hitmontop and Hitmonlee being Okos with Machamp, I am skeptical. I don't doubt Drill Peck will do some work, but it's never going to be enough. I am proven right when Machamp is taken into Red Bar. Cross Chop doesn't miss though and steamrolls Doris. Time for another birdie backup in Kenya. We should be fine because Bruno will definitely want to heal the Machamp with a Max Potion, allowing us to get a guaranteed hit. What's also different this time around is that not only is Kenya a higher level, but it also has the Sharp Beak equipped. Those two things combined eliminate the chance of this being a range. Another Elite Four member down. Karen's now waiting for us. We have a fighting Pokemon. It's not a very good fighting Pokemon, but it's the only one we've got. Aside from that, I honestly don't think Karen's going to be too much of a roadblock. Umbreon's probably going to be the biggest hurdle for us because of its annoying moveset. At the start of the battle, we've got Muscle. Umbreon's going to be quicker and I should have been using Vital Throw from the start, but instead went for Low Kick. It's not doing great damage and suffering a Sand Attack is never an optimal strategy. Next turn, I learn my lesson and go for Vital Throw. Even though we've taken 2 rounds of Sand to the eye, we still managed to get off the attack and it's doing a much more respectable damage now. Umbreon, however, doesn't just have Sand Attack. It's got Confuse Ray, so we're getting confused. And then we're hitting ourselves in confusion. Muscle does manage to get things together in the end, however, whipping out a final Karate Chop to defeat the bulky Umbreon. Honestly, next up, I was expecting Gengar, but Karen instead decides to send out Vileplume. I know it's waiting to use Stun Spore, and I know that I need to switch out into a flying Pokemon. We've not got much choice, so I just roll with it. Out you go, Doris. And I'm surprised when we get hit with Pearl Dance, fine by us. With Dodrio's great attack and moves like Drill Peck, Vileplume doesn't stand a chance. Bye bye. Now here's the Gengar. It's actually quicker than us and uses Curse, but we've already lined up a Drill Peck, so we do in the end technically get an Oko on it. Kind of a waste of a Pokemon from Karen to be honest, but we will take it. Karen will obviously want to save her ace, the Houndoom, for last, so we're expecting that Murkrow next. I was thinking Rocky might be a good shout because of Rock Throw, but Rocky also has trash special defense, so that when Murkrow uses Feint Attack, it ends up doing a ton of damage. So much so that we're not even able to attack next turn and Rocky just ends up getting KO'd. Well, Volty hasn't done much this battle, so we might as well go and get some use out of the thing. It will be faster than Murkrow at least. All we need is for Thunder to hit. Looks with us this time and Thunder does hit and totally fries Murkrow. Karen's just got Houndoom remaining. We have 5 Pokemon left on our side. That Pokemon has some great moves and awesome special attack, so we just need to tank a hit here and there. Technically, Muscle has the advantage here too. Also, Muscle sucks, but we send it out anyway. As soon as it's out, Houndoom uses Flamethrower, and now we have just 4 Pokemon left. When in doubt, use Drill Peck. So out you go, Doris. I don't know if we'll one-shot, but we should take off a fair chunk of Houndoom's HP. In the end, we do one bear with a crit and defeat our final Elite Four member. Well, it was all going too smoothly there, so there had to be a hiccup somewhere. Lance is where I predict that's going to occur. Aside from Gyarados, we've got nothing. Machop could technically learn Ice Punch, but it's too weak and slow to outlast any of the Pokemon it had come up against. I am fully expecting us to have to keep banging our heads against this battle. A first try victory ain't on the cards this time. Let's see what we're in for. Gyarados. We've got an answer to that in Thunder, but we don't use it. Instead, we go for Rollout. The plan here was to have it hit at a high enough level and Electros fast enough that it should just tear through Lance's Pokemon. Doesn't quite work out that way, however. Even though Gyarados will set up Rain Dance on its first turn, typically, now that its Surf has been powered up, it'll do well over half damage. Electrode can't stand up to that. In the end, our cheeky strat has been dismantled. We've always got trusty Doris though. Drill Peck's probably our best bet for all these Pokemon. It can defeat Gyarados, but because Gyarados was defeated with a flying type, Lance will bring in his Dragonite with Thunder next. Though Drill Peck's okay, it's not where we need it to be. Dragonite then uses Thunder and it toasts Doris. Bringing out another flying Pokemon that won't KO Dragonite isn't a great play, and there's still one with Blizzard, remember. So I pivot to Muscle. Our best move is Seismic Toss because it's not resisted. Dragonite will want to paralyze us, which it does, but at least we get a move off. But with Dragonite's HP reserves, things aren't looking so great. Sure enough, next turn Dragonite uses Hyper Beam. Somehow Muscle hangs on. It couldn't finish Dragonite off next turn, but wouldn't you just know it, Muscle's paralyzed. GG, there's another Hyper Beam. However, with great Hyper Beam comes great recharging. To take advantage of this, who better than Rocky? So we unleash the Snake. Of course, we're going for Rock Throw. Of course, we are missing. If that's not enough, next turn Dragonite uses Twister, does good damage, and it flinches us. Brilliant. It relents next turn with Hyper Beam, finally allowing us KO the thing. Next up, Lance wants to send out that Blizzard Dragonite. No point in changing to another Pokemon, so Rocky's going to have to be the one that takes a face full of Blizzard. It serves its purpose well and faints, allowing us to switch into, well, Shuckie. The plan here was to get Dragonite to waste as many Blizzards as possible. To be fair to Shuckie, it does manage to tank one of them at least. Then next turn it is forced to take another. Now we have only just one Pokemon remaining. Can Kenya see us through the rest of the battle with Drill Peck alone? Even though we use Fly, which doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, the answer is a decisive no. Dragonite uses its final Blizzard and Kenya's the opposite of Toast, frozen for maximum freshness. Again, we have two problems and can only really solve one of them. The first is our movesets. We can't do anything about that, not anything significant anyway. The second is our level. We can affect some change there, and it's not by roaming around Victory Road for annoying low-level scrubs. It makes the most sense, keep repeatedly challenging the Elite Four and just see how far we get. The boon that comes with traded Pokemon is that leveling up happens at quite a clip. One downside is that you'd have to go out of your way to level up Pokemon that do not typically get used during an attempt, our Rockies and Muscles. The general plan is to keep going through this, learning a little more each time, and perhaps getting closer to Lance in doing so. It doesn't take as long as you might imagine. After maybe another 30 minutes of 4 times speed, we've been consistently making it through to Lance, but still failing. Our strategy over the course of this has not changed a great deal for the preceding Elite Four members, but we have had to switch things up for Lance. For the Pokemon we've seen, like the Dragonite, Gyarados, and those we had yet to encounter in that first go-around, Charizard and Aerodactyl, you'll notice that Electrode is now level 48, an increase of 9 levels since the first time we faced off in Lance. Abandoning the big brain strat of trying for rollout, Thunder is a guaranteed win. Even if we miss the first one, which we do here, Gyarados will always go for Rain Dance turn 1. While it's raining, Thunder will always hit, which works just fine for us. With the Gyarados down, Lance will swap into Dragonite. I can't recall exactly which Dragonite this one is, I think possibly the Thunder one. Either way, what we want to do now is swap into Rocky. Rocky's only purpose in this battle is to just keep using Screech against Dragonite. In this particular battle, after Dragonite misses with Thunder Wave and we use Screech, it will change into using Twister. In theory, we could survive 3 of these. However, though we do get off a total of 2 Screeches, Dragonite crits on its second Twister, knocking Rocky out. Those 2 Screeches should be enough though. With the option to change, we can swap into either Doris or Kenya, they're both the same level now. I think attack wise, they're probably around the same in damage output given their base stats and held items. Doesn't matter because 1 Drill Peck from either will knock Dragonite out. We have lost 1 Pokemon and claimed 2 of Lances. We're not out of the woods yet though, far from it. It's the Blizzard Dragonite next. Our best bet is to field Shuckie to soak up the damage for just 2 turns. Outside of a crit, it's guaranteed Shuckie can just sit there and take the abuse. Just one of those on the rest of our team is fatal. That is the first part of taking out Dragonite. The second is to then switch into Muscle. Muscle can take a few hits. More importantly, it can put the hurt on Dragonite just enough before it's eventually KO'd so that we can then execute the next part of our plan. You see, Dragonite likes using Hyper Beam. We want one of those to knock Muscle out, and it does just that. Dragonite's gonna be recharging. It's in yellow bar and in just the right spot for Kenya to swoop on in and get the finishing blow with Drill Peck. In hindsight, it wouldn't have been a terrible idea to set up Electrode and roll out, but who cared? Now the plan was to switch into Electrode, and we do just that. But more than that, it was to use Thunder, because we can tank a Rock Slide and our Thunder will knock Aerodactyl out. Wouldn't you just know it though, Volty doesn't want to hit. It's just going to sit there while Aerodactyl abuses it and is totally missing with Thunder every single turn. Finally, Aerodactyl puts us out of our misery without Volty having inflicted a single hit point of damage. We now have just 2 Pokemon left. Things started well, but have swiftly taken a wrong turn. Well, we still have Doris and Kenya. I decided to send Doris out. The power of Drill Peck is now taking us through this battle. Along with the turn to recharge from Aerodactyl's Hyper Beam, Drill Peck's gonna be a 3-shot. We end up getting extremely lucky because Aerodactyl's Rock Slide misses, allowing us to KO it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. There is still a Charizard and a level 50 Dragonite waiting. How are we going to get through them? For Charizard, Doris puts its heads together, digs deep, and pulls out a Tri-Attack crit on Charizard to one-shot it. Praise the bird. Still 1 Pokemon remaining though. Lance's ace, the Dragonite. It is no pushover. There is no point changing. Let's go Doris. If Drill Peck or Tri-Attack does half, we're good. I deliberate for a second before choosing Drill Peck. It hits, and it does over half. Dragonite hits with Outrage and takes us all the way into red bar on 15 HP with a crit. Doesn't matter though, we have made it past the halfway mark. 1 more Drill Peck hits and shaves off the rest of Dragonite's HP, giving us the victory over Lance. Elite Four and Champion defeated. Our 2 bird Pokemon have absolutely been carrying this run, bless them. But now there's Kanto, which opens up a few more Pokemon to bring onto our team. Some cuts are just going to have to be made. Some decisions are easy to make than others though. While the gym leaders, in this instance at least, aren't worth talking about, the trades and Pokemon we require for them are. The first trade we're going to make requires us to catch a Haunter. With our XP share being stuck with the Dragonair we sent to Emmy in Blackthorn, it's not like we can just break into a house at night and steal it right back. An easier way would be to visit Rock Tunnel at the Lavender Town exit. On the first floor at 10% at night, you have a chance of encountering Haunter. Honestly, not too difficult of a thing to capture, it's just having a Pokemon who can actually weaken it where you can run into some problems. So what does a Haunter get? Well, if we visit Pewter City, we'll find Chris. Chris is willing to trade our Haunter for his Xatu, Paul. Now in Japanese, Poru has an extremely symbolic meaning because in the art of Buddhism, Poru is one of the highest nanana. It is literally just the name Paul, like McCartney or that Pope, or that guy at the pub. It is a ridiculous name for a Xatu, but we will take it. Xatu itself isn't bad. It has some decent enough special attack and speed. However, at this level, we only really get Peck, Leer, and Nightshade for it. Not only that, the only good move it'll get leveling up, as far as we're going anyway, will be Confuse Ray. However, to make it more viable, you can go to Mr. Psychic's house and grab the TM of the same name, which we'll teach Paul. 1 down, 2 to go. Next up, we'll need a Dugtrio. For those that played Gen 1, the same method applies here still. You get a Pokemon that's around the 20s, use a Repel, and then just walk around Diglett's Cave to proc an encounter with a Dugtrio. Simple stuff. Once we have Dugtrio, we'll be heading to the Kanto Power Plant. Forest, which is an interesting name for someone working in a power plant, is willing to trade us a Magneton for a Dugtrio. Unlike Paul, the Japanese name of Tetsumaru actually has some meaning. Tetsu is iron or metal, and Maro is a ball or a sphere. And wouldn't you know it, Magneton are a bunch of metal balls. Magneton is actually a decent Pokemon, sporting great special attack, and its steel typing makes it defensively strong too. The problem again lies with its learn set. It's too high a level to even have Thundershock, and we've already used all of our money to buy Thunder for Volty. Previously, through continuously battling the Elite Four, we also ran low on our savings and will have to do a bunch of battling to recoup those losses. But I have a plan for later with Maggie, so we're all good for now. We are saving the best Pokemon for last, and potentially the trade is the most difficult to pull off because we need to capture a Chansey, and Chansey has a 1% encounter rate. But through the power of repels, we can make this a lot easier. We simply need a Pokemon around level 25. By putting this Pokemon in the lead of our party using a repel and then walking around the grass, our chances to encounter a Chansey naturally increase, so it's not long until we eventually find and then catch it. With that done, we simply head up to the woman standing in the, let's say it's a flower patch, who will trade our Chansey for her Aerodactyl, Aeroy. I'm going to call it Aeroy. In Japanese, it's Pt2, so yeah, I've got nothing. It just sounds like a nickname to me, but that's it. That is all the Pokemon we have access to, so we need to now give some thought as to who will encompass the team that we will eventually use to battle Red. In the end, our team's are going to look like this: Aeroy, the Aerodactyl, Muscle, the Machoke, Maggie, the Magneton, Doris, the Dodrio, Paul, the Xatu, ridiculous name, and Kenya, the Pharaoh. 4 out of 6 Pokemon are flying types. Red has a Pikachu. Blastoise also knows Blizzard. We do not have the moves that will be super effective against all his Pokemon. What level are we going to need to be at? Well, we can forget about that for a moment because we can use the opportunity to train up our Pokemon as we tackle the various gyms and trainers in Kanto. This is now the time to use any of those TMs we were hanging onto. In particular, I teach Earthquake to Aerodactyl. It may be a risk with Pikachu and other Pokemon, but it's better than Rocky the Onix, that's for sure. Now, finally, let's talk about Red. Through our journey, most Pokemon are level 50, with the exceptions being Doris and Kenya, who are 60 or thereabouts. We roll into battle. The first thing to note here is that at level 50, Aeroy will currently not outspeed Pikachu. If Pikachu hits with Thunder, it is a one-shot. If Pikachu misses, however, then an Earthquake from Aeroy will knock it out. Pikachu ain't the problem though, Blastoise is. Blastoise is not only 15 levels above the majority of our Pokemon, it has moves that will one-shot every single one of our Pokemon. Against all the flying types, of which we have 4, remember, it has Blizzard, so you would think to send out Magneton in this case. If we pivot straight to Magneton, Blastoise will use Surf. That will be an Oko. Crits don't matter right now. Blastoise can also one-shot a Pokemon like Muscle too, no problem. And we haven't even started talking about how we can actually inflict damage on a Pokemon like this because it's super tanky. Our Drill Pecks, which have served us so well before, are lucky if they do around a quarter of Blastoise's HP. Even when we do make it to Blastoise, we would have to sacrifice as many Pokemon as there are Blizzard charges in order to defeat it, and Red's still got a bunch of Pokemon remaining too. On one occasion through this method, we do make it past Blastoise with an Aeroy Hyper Beam, which will lead Red to field Espeon next. Espeon, if you don't know, is rather good. It has Psychic, and that will sweep Aeroy. Not good. Like the Elite Four, we need to gain some more levels, but not too many levels, 4 levels in fact. I want to caveat that 4 levels because what happens in this battle is as ridiculous as naming a Xatu Paul. At level 54, Aeroy will now outspeed Pikachu. This particular battle has now become free, easy every time, but we still have the Blastoise problem. And what is the solution? Like Aeroy, it's all about the levels, but we're not pivoting to Maggie just yet. We want Kenya. Why? Well, the hope is firstly that Blastoise will have wanted to use Surf. Doesn't always, but this time it does. Surf won't KO Kenya, it'll leave it in red bar, which means that next turn it will choose to use a lower damaging move like Whirlpool. When we bring in Maggie, this happens. Maggie is not level 54, it is level 59. I used the remaining rare candies I had on hand, and this level is important. Against Blastoise, we'll use Thunder Wave. After that's proc, we'll then move to Supersonic, and deliberating because I'm not sure if Thunderbolt, which we taught from the guy who appears on Wednesdays near the game corner, to Maggie. Don't know if it'll do enough. However, when we eventually use it, only getting damaged by Whirlpool, it ends up KOing the Blastoise. Good result. But Espeon's next, and I'm not sure what the plan is. I think about attacking with Maggie, maybe paralyzing Espeon, but eventually feel like I'd be better swapping into another Pokemon. Didn't go with that in the end. We're sticking it out with Maggie. Espeon ends up going for Reflect. Perfect. We're going for Thunder Wave. Next turn, Wheel Out Speed, and I want to confuse the Espeon, but Supersonic doesn't hit, but Espeon Psychic deals a ton of damage and leaves us on just 26 HP. The very next turn though, Espeon hits itself in confusion. I decided to really change things up this time. Kenya's down, so it's up to Doris. As soon as we're out, Espeon hits itself in confusion again. We then go for Tri Attack. Was hoping for a freeze or something, but we didn't get it. Still, even with Reflect, that is good damage, and Espeon's hit itself in confusion once again. Reflect then fades. Tri Attack had come so close to knocking Espeon out before, but couldn't quite make it. But then Espeon is confused for one final time and hits itself again. That is like a 6.25% chance. Crazy odds. Doris's feathers ain't been ruffled through that entire fight, but Red's sending out Snorlax next. What's the plan? Doris has done well, but it needs a break, so Muscle's gonna tag in to take down the big boy. As soon as it's out, Snorlax goes for Amnesia. Fine by us. Next turn, we go for Cross Chop, and wouldn't you know it, it misses, but Snorlax has used Amnesia again anyway. Okay, next turn, we use Cross Chop again, it hits, but it's just not taking Snorlax over half HP, not great. Snorlax then uses Body Slam and oof, that is a lot of damage. Leftovers helps a bit, but we won't survive another one of those. I'm really not sure what to do here. I'm hoping Low Kick could do more damage because of the weight, but I haven't tried the calculation. In the end, I just roll with it. Low Kick hits. A crit does about the same as Cross Chop, but there's the flinch. Boy, that's it. Snorlax ain't quicker than us. We've got another Low Kick lined up. It hits. Snorlax is taken out. 2 Pokemon left. We know it's Charizard next because Venusaur is weak to the rest of our team. Muscle won't be surviving this round, but its contributions won't be forgotten after Snorlax. Charizard uses Flamethrower and toasts us. This is a tricky one. Who's out next? It's gotta be Maggie. We've just gotta hope it goes first, but it probably won't. Frustrating? Okay, it's out. We choose Thunderbolt. Charizard uses Fire Spin and misses. Wow, our Thunderbolt's good. Maybe we should have just gotten Thunder instead. Doesn't matter. Maggie's out next round. No way we're surviving. Charizard uses Flamethrower. Maggie's not... Wait, what? Held on with a Focus Band? Oh, I did end up equipping that, I guess. Alright, Maggie. We use Thunderbolt. Charizard's KO'd. Only 1 Pokemon left. Venusaur's out. We know it likes to use Solar Beam. Maggie ain't surviving this, but we might as well use Thunder Wave first. As a final act, we'll have Maggie go for Screech. It hits Venusaur. Focus Band doesn't proc this time and it is knocked out as well. Well, come on Doris. Time to take this thing home. We unleash the bird. It's going to use Drill Peck. We're going to go first. Drill Peck hits. And we sit back and watch Venusaur's HP dwindle to nothing. And hey, crit too. But with that, it is over and Red is defeated. Cool run. Obviously easier than a solo run would have been, but being restricted in the Pokemon and the typings moves you have available was a different type of challenge. Game Freak obviously had a thing for flying Pokemon and a little more diversity would have been nice. Well, MVP of the run, I'm going to say it's split between Doris and Kenya. Drill Peck and Tri Attack, they're just reliable moves. Runner-up has to be Maggie, just for hanging on with Focus Band, and Aerodactyl because it is cool. And Paul?
You sicken me.
But hey, maybe you could have made the run even easier. Feel free to let me know. If you have an idea for an interesting run in the same style, let me know. And if you want to like or subscribe, go for it. Until next time, have a good one.